All right, I'm Doug Mooney, and I did a drawing in photo by hand. I wanted to colorize it in Photoshop. Um, this is a space mouse, but I'm actually drawing a kangaroo rat or colorizing a kangaroo rat. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen with Photoshop. So there's the kangaroo rat, and I'll just do Control plus so we can zoom in on him a little bit. I think the drawing turned out real well. I was trying to practice fur. I think the fur is pretty nice. I scanned this image, and under image size, it's 600 resolution. That's just so it can print better. It could be 300. And so this is, if I go to inches, 10 by 8, which is a standard frame size. It's interesting that our paper sizes don't match our frame sizes. So when I draw, I try to think of a standard frame size. And so I used a number 2 pencil and then a 4B and then a 6B to get the eyes real dark. So just getting some different shades of color. Now, what I did also is here, I have the picture of a kangaroo rat so we can see what his coloration looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'll take my eyedropper, which is I, not E, just I to get to it. And I'm going to pick this color right in here, this brownish color. Now, when you pick it, there's a lot of different pixels. So you might click and get a really dark color. I think that one worked pretty well to pick a color. And then I can jump back here to the kangaroo rat. So I do have a layer here that I did colorize the forehead. And so I colorized it and I set this forehead layer to, I didn't set it, but multiply. And not this one, normal. This one's set to multiply. So it shows the black through. Now I think it's a little dark. And what I did with it is I used my burn and dodge tool. They're very helpful. Here, dodge makes it lighter, and I set it to mid-tones. And so I just came in here, and where the highlights are, I set it to a lower percentage with the soft edge. You can see you can put the highlight on. I think that color's still a little dark because it's not showing the lines as much. So I can just take this forehead and change the opacity down a little bit. And so I can adjust it. And I think somewhere in there, maybe 80%, I'm getting a pretty nice look. Now notice the edges here, I didn't do quite as good a job painting this in. Now you could make a selection and alt delete to fill it with the foreground color. But I drew this, and then you can take the eraser. And I like using the eraser, and I'm on the forehead layer. And if I click and hold the shift key, it does a nice straight line from where I click. So you can clean up the edges pretty well. And I think that looks good for the top of the kangaroo rat in here. There's a little brown in there, which I could come in and put a little brown, but I think it's good enough for colorizing this guy. So down in here is where I have that tan color. So if I take my eyedropper, again, it's I, not E to get to it. I don't know what E does. If I hit E, E does something, eraser. So I want to pick this brownish color in here and see if it matches fairly well. That's pretty good. Now I'll come over here and I'm just going to take my brush. And I don't care if it goes over the edges because I'm going to do it on another layer. And this I'll call rump or thigh, whatever. Rump is good as long as I know what is going on. And so this color in here, I'll come in and with the brush, B for brush, B for brush. Interesting. B for brush. It's going to the pencil, but there's the brush. And you could have a hard edge or you could have a soft edge. I went to a harder edge And I'm going to 100% opacity. It's on a different layer. And you can use your left bracket, the one that's 2 over from the P. Sometimes you have to click once to get this to work. So I like clicking off the edge so you're not actually painting. And I can paint this color in here. Now notice this is giving me a really sharp edge. Have a look at the kangaroo. It's gray in this, and it's gray. I'm using the left bracket. It's gray in here, but then it goes into a more tan color. So I'll put the gray in here. And then we can go back to a more tan color elsewhere. And you can always do a softer edge or a lower opacity if you're putting the tan in. So this one, I'll just come in here, and I can use the shift key to do more of a straight line because it goes from where you click to the next place in more of a straight line. And I'm not going to worry about taking this away, but if we set this to then on the forehead layer, which could be okay. Normally I want to do it on different layers, so I messed up, but if you do it on different layers, if they happen to overlap, it doesn't hurt. You can play with it. But so this one has the opacity and it has the edges, which may be not as clean. I'm going to go to E to the eraser, and I'll go here and shift and come across here and see how that one didn't work. Control Z, and you can just click, 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 click. I'm holding the shift key down to make this a straight line. And even here, click, 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 click. So it takes a little bit of control. Now, I used to sometimes use this smudge tool, which is here. And if I didn't like it, I could make the smudge tool big and kind of smudge it in to clean up the edges, or smudge it out to clean up the edges. And you can do that too, but I think the eraser works pretty well. Now, the kangaroo is here, and I'm going to go eyedropper, which is E, and pick this tan here. And so the tan's in here and over in here. So trying to just simulate that with the brush. And I'll make this a softer edge and maybe even lower the opacity for now. And so the tan was in here. And so you're using it like an airbrush this way to overlap this. It's still set to multiply, so you can see the black lines through. And we can switch in here. So up here on the top and up here where it's going up towards the neck. And even the back of the head has a little. So we can come in here. And I'm just blending those edges a little bit. Like that. And even here had some tan that came down. Again, having it on a separate layer, I think that's looking pretty good. Even having this on a separate layer can help because you can change the opacity or even change the blend mode. Notice with the forehead, if I change the blend mode to linear burn, or if I change it to darken color or overlay, notice how it changes. Now, this isn't what I like, but the hard light difference makes it opposite blue from tan. So instead of yellows and oranges and exclusion. So you can see that there's a lot of different choices here. But I find with this colorization, you can either do darken or multiply. And I think the multiply always works out a little better. And it's just giving the colors here doing pretty well. Now, one thing that you can do with this is it's a little lighter right up. Let me make this brush a little. Actually, I could do cap locks and do an X. Right up in here, there's just a little lightness. That's the edge of his his knee. I guess his knee goes up like this and around. So I guess it's his knee. And so if I want that lightness in here, in these two spots, now you could do it all the way across, but the two spots, and there's some lighter in here. So this would be lighter. And if I use the dodge tool and make it a little bigger, have the opacity down a bit. I like, see now you have to kind of click with this, and sometimes you have to click off. And in this case, my cap locks is on, so you can't see how big it is. So you could continue to make it bigger and bigger. But right in here, I want to take this and I want to make it lighter right in there. And see how that's getting lighter. And then here, lighter. Now it's the same color, it's just the lighter of that color. And I think that doing these burn and dodges really help to lighten these certain areas. So we're really, you have to kind of see as a artist, look at his legs are a lighter color too. So if I go into the here and I color it with a light gray, I could then put a little highlight across the edge of it to make it look a little more rounded. So here with the kangaroo rat, the back here is that grayish color also. E for eyedropper, I for eyedropper, E for eraser. Now, need to get that right. Eyedropper, because I starts with an E, so it's a little confusing, but that's fine. I got the color, it looks okay. We'll come back in here, and so the back of his neck here with the brush can come in here. That drive supporter, I don't know if you saw it, but I clicked on it and now it put something on my computer and it always says, oh, you can get drive supporter, it only costs so much. And no matter what I do to try to get rid of it, I haven't got rid of it. Now it's not messing with me totally, but it still bothers me that it pops up every once in a while because it's on my machine, and what is it doing to me? I don't know. I maybe need to find malware bites and get rid of it. My antivirus doesn't seem to care if it's bugging me. So cleaning these up and darkening in there. He's got that little ridge there, cap locks here, and then the gray coming back here. So that looks pretty good. And maybe a little darker. So if you need it to be darker, and I can also use the eraser to clean it up a little bit. I don't mind it being a little fuzzy in here where the hair is, but E, and take the cap locks off, and I can come in here and clean this up. And again, I didn't do a different layer, and really, it's easier if you do a different layer in case you want to change the opacity of it. I think this is looking good, so I'm not worried about that, but let me do this. Tab. See the tab key in Photoshop, if I click here, it turns off all your tools so you can really look at it. Tab to turn the tools and the layers back on. So I really want to do a different layer each time. I'll go here and say new layer. I'll call it tail. It's really easier if you do different layers and you want to name them. And so with this one, if I go in and I look at the tail, there's some lights and there's some darks, but mostly kind of this mid-gray. So I'll take that with the eye, get the eyedropper and get that mid-gray. I can use the burn tool and the dodge tool to add those lights and darks. And now if I go B for brush, I can come out here and I'll make the brush a little softer, maybe medium hard. See, this says hardness, but this is actually the harder edge on the brush. This is the softer edge. I should say softness and hardness over here, I think. So now if I take this and I click off the edge, I can use my left bracket to make it just a little smaller. and click, shift, click, shift, click. And so it's about, see how it's overlapping there a little bit? So I might take this and set the opacity to 100% because I'm doing this little clicking to make a straight line, but then I'm gradually curving it. And we can change the opacity of this later on. And so I like using the shift key and clicking. So it just gives you a fairly straight line. I might have to go back over this just a little bit there. The tail's getting a little thicker where it's closer to you. Visually, it gets thicker. And I can make it just a hair smaller using the left bracket. Since it's curved, I have to do a few clicks because they're actually doing straight lines. Now the end of his tail is pretty light, so we'll do that. And this here is too kinky here, so I'll go shift, Control Z. I'll click and then shift and click and kind of smooth that out. Here I'll click, shift, click, holding the shift key down. Now that layer is not set to multiply yet. Once you do the multiply, you can see a little more of the hair coming through. Now this here is a shadow, but I need the tail to be just a little wider here. And I don't like the opacity of this, and I could play with a little bit, maybe eraser there. There's a little bump there. Sometimes it get, you can see these things and you go, oh, I need to just clean that up a little bit. And since I'm on a different layer, it's not affecting the color layer here or this very background, which this isn't really white. It's kind of a tan of the paper. So here with the tail, I can bring the opacity down a little bit. And you can see that that shows off the hairs a little more. And the kangaroo rat, and I don't think you can see it in this picture, but his tail, at least the ones I've seen, is darker here. Has a little band and a white thing. I think they use their tail and flick it to throw off their prey because like they'll, like in football where you go one way and act like you're going one way and you go another way. I think it's called juking. I'm not sure. But they use their tail, I think, to throw off the people chasing them. They'll push it one way and they'll go the other way. And so they tend to follow the tail, and the body's the main part, though they need their tail for balance. So here, instead of the dodge, we'll use burn. These are photographic tools. The dodge tool, if you wanted things to be lighter in the photography studio, when you expose the light, if you didn't want a lot of light there, because if there was a lot of light, it would turn dark, you could put a piece of paper or cut a shape and put it on top. So you're dodging the light to make it lighter. And to burn things, they take the chemical, they could use a Q-tip and burn things. If you know Ansel Adams, his photos are so beautiful, but he did a lot of dodging and burning in the studio to make them even more beautiful. So they're not exactly the way they looked in Yosemite. If you don't know Ansel Adams, look him up, very famous photographer. So this is the burn tool. Notice it's going to burn only shadows. This tone is almost a shadow because it's dark. Basically, shadows means dark. Midtones, mid colors, and highlights. So if this is set to highlights, it might not do as much. See how it's not doing a lot. And I'm on the tail layer. You can even lock these layers if you get them done so you don't mess with them on accident. So the tail layer, if I want to do this, I need midtones or shadows. I'll try shadows. And shadows, it should make this darker. See how the shadow's working to make this darker. And midtones might make it even darker. And putting a little band on his tail there. Now, on this tail, in the picture here, it has some highlights of white. It's actually this tail of the rat showing through, since the hair's, I think, a little thinner on his tail. He needs a hair club for rats. Anyway, here, if I want that lightness, I can do the dodge tool, which is right here, and make it really small with the left bracket. And I'll just go, and it's dodging midtones, and it's pretty much a midtone. And I'll just go here. Now this, if you put a highlight on this, notice it's not showing up a lot. I'm on the tail layer, 14% exposure, let's go 42. And I go here and go on it. So now you can see it's getting just a little lighter. I like working up to it so that I don't mess up. That lightness is actually going to make the tail seem a little more round, because cylindrical things have a highlight right there. And I can just continue to work on this. I may have to click 2 or 3 times, see how it's giving me a little bit of a bump where it is. And you don't have to have that highlight everywhere, but I'm going to put it here, and then I'm switching sides and going to the other side of the tail. So this is now the top of the tail. And I might even go up here to a little higher on the opacity. They call it exposure. It's like opacity. And it's not really noticeable unless I go over it a couple times, but you can see it's the way the light is hitting his tail. It's giving it a little bit of a highlight. And it's subtle, but it looks pretty good, I think. Now, I'm doing the dodging, which makes this lighter. And again, on your screen, you might not see it quite as well, but when I go over it a couple times, it starts to pop. So I'm a big fan of the dodging and burning to make things give it a little more three-dimensionality. Now I'm going to go here and burn and come here. And underneath where the shadow would be, I'm burning this. And again, you have to think whether this is light or is it a mid-tone or is it a highlight? Well, it's kind of a middle gray, so I'll call it a mid-tone. And as I go over this, I'm holding the shift key down as I click so it does a straight line. I know it's a curve, but if you do many short straight lines, you can see it's starting to work there. I'll go with shadows and see how that works. You can see that now better. And again, I like doing it in a subtle way where it's only 13% exposure here and going over it more than once, because then I don't totally mess up and go too far with it. But where the shadow would be, I'm just bumping it up a little bit here. And you can see that that will, and under here, under the tail, that's more of an area that would be in the shadow. And you can really see how it's starting to get more rounded. So drawing lessons are good, but also in Photoshop, you can bump these up. Now this burn and dodge tool won't work on anything that doesn't have, this layer only has this tail on it. If I turn the layer off, you can see. So the burn and dodge is only working where that tail is. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now, one thing I haven't done is I got to save, Control S. I'm saving it as a Photoshop document. Eventually you can make it a JPEG. I'm going to go with the eraser, and on this forehead, I'm going to unlock it. I just want to clean this up a little bit. Now, you don't have to do this at 100%. I'll go like 47 and I'll click here and shift. If you happen to hit the cap lock, it makes the X so you can align things a little better. Yeah, I think that helped. There's a little extra there behind him. So he's really coming along to be a colorized kangaroo rat. I will finish him up, and probably with this video, I'll post it at spacemousecommand.com. And he's not really a space mouse. He's a kangaroo rat. But they're very cute. I had one as a pet when I was young, and he'd just sit in your hand, and he loved to be touched. And I don't know if it was probably a she, because looking underneath, I didn't see anything. But who knows? And even the shadow, I might darken it in. But I'll do a few more layers and color these different areas here, and even the feet, maybe with a very light tannish color, and even the tail. I think if it had a slightly creamish color, then I think that would help. I don't think I need to do the rocks or any of the background. I probably need to clean up this edge here because there was a little bit of pencil blur there. So I need to get this color with the eyedropper and unlock that layer to get that color. And then with the brush B, can come in here. It might be a smear on my screen. Nope, it isn't. It's on the drawing. So I just painted that in with the same tan. And saving. Control S. You do want to save. He does have, I think, just a little bit of pink here on the edges of his ears. His nose has a slight pink tint, which I might come in and put in. But I think he's looking pretty good. I don't like this. It's too hard. I'll try to smooth that out with the gray at a lower opacity and a soft edge. But I think he's turning out well. So I'm Doug Mooney. Space Mouse is at spacemousecommand.wordpress.com. And I do Maya lessons there, but I'm going to start doing some Photoshop lessons because they help with Maya, and even Illustrator lessons if you want to check it out. If you're there, like it. And all right, very good. And if you ever want to do some Maya lessons, I'm just charging my Maya students lunch every time, and it can just give me $10 PayPal for each lesson, and you can start learning Maya. All right, thank you very much. Doug Mooney, over and out. I'll go here and I'll say stop share, and we'll stop recording.